what we should be doing about it, here's who you should contact, and it makes it very easy for people to respond to that. And I think that's proven very effective for the National Rifle Association, and I think more groups should be doing that as well. I wish there was an alert system from all the child advocacy groups that would guarantee 10,000 emails the next morning, because I think that could be done. I think there's enough groups out there working. It's just a matter of having somebody respond quickly to things, give a concise summary, basically say who needs to be responded to, who you need to send these to, and then perhaps getting a few key people around the state to take it beyond the email to phone calls. But I think that takes, I think that kind of organized effort is what it's going to take to make a dent with this legislature. I'd like to end there on that general statement, and maybe we can talk about some of the issues, and maybe you all have some experiences of successful campaigns with the legislature that you want to tell me how you did it, and or if they weren't successful, what you think you could have done differently, because I'm curious about how you all think you can move legislation through a group I find resistant to anything that they think sort of intrudes on parental authority, or anything they think is really a family issue and the state should stay out of it. So anyway, anybody?
Good morning everybody. My name is Joel Alvarado. I'm the policy director of the GCAP, Georgia Campaign for Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention. And basically I think I'm going to ask the same question I asked yesterday for those of you who were at the Georgia Budget Policy Institute question. I had indicated that we were having a very rational discussion, but that's because it was that you didn't have the political component within it to make it irrational. Because everything that you're talking about is highly irrational. It works against us as a state and as people, but yet they still move forward anyway, even though they know the information. For me, I think one of the challenges that if we keep looking at it from top down, if we try to convince legislators that they in turn will convince their constituency group, that's an act of futility. We're not going to get anything from there. I think what we have to figure out is how do we convince those people that they think are listening to their message. So if Casey Cagle says, I'm not going to raise any new taxes whatsoever, he believes there's a base of people who will be like, yeah, that's right, Casey, give it to them, don't raise any taxes. But we have to somehow inform them that, no, listen to what he's saying. What is the resultant of not doing that? That means we're going to cut so many programs that's going to affect your quality of life that you don't even realize it. And it's going to cost you more in the future than if you invest now in some new taxes in order to save many of the programs that help your community. So as a media expert, if you can help us fashion a message that would resonate with this so-called voter group outside of 285 that really, that sort of loves the stuff that they supposedly promote and support, then I think we could make significant inroads. Because at the end of the day, it's about survival. It's very Darwinistic in the legislature. It's about re-electability. And so if we can get to the voters, then the voters can get to their representatives, then the representatives will be willing to work with some policy that makes sense for Georgia.
Right. I mean, the only challenge you have with that is that to reach those voters, I mean, the legislature is going to begin next Monday and going to wrap up in April. So I just don't think there's time to re-educate Georgians as to what these things, the personal losses to them. I think you can try to bring people in to testify about their personal losses, but I think one of the issues here is that we are a very conservative state, and I saw that I had a small hope, and I'll be up front that I was a Hillary Clinton supporter, but happily embraced Barack Obama. And my daughter actually took a year off from college and worked for Barack Obama, so I heard about Barack Obama all day and all night. And I was delighted to see Barack Obama win, and I thought maybe Georgia might go, a miracle might vote for Barack Obama, but even come close, and I was surprised that it wasn't closer. I was also very disappointed in the Jim Martin results with Saxby-Chambliss, because I thought that these are just measures of, I think, how conservative this state is. And I think there's a little bit of, again, being from New Jersey, this is something I've had to get used to too. And those of you who are native Southerners may be able to speak to this, which is that we don't want to be told what to do here in Georgia by the rest of the state. There's a certain amount of perverse pride in being out of step with the rest of the country. And I was talking to Mark about this before I came in. There's even a perverse pride in being seen as a little backward and a little sort of, I mean, like, don't tell us what to do, and it's a disastrous attitude, because the people that you want to come here now is, you want CEOs to think, I'm going to locate my new company in Georgia because it's a great place to live, nice climate. You want, good schools. I mean, the same reasoning that people have in locating their businesses in Connecticut, and this whole high-tech group that's gone to Vermont and Maine because it's picturesque there and low taxes and all of that. But you want to bring those folks to Georgia, and so I think you're up against that attitude of the outside the perimeter folks in particular. Not only do they not care about being out of step with the rest of the country, they delight in being out of step with Atlanta, and I think that's a hard attitude to deal with. I think it's idiotic, but it's also sort of their emblem. I mean, it's when you go down and those rural legislators talk as if everybody down an hour outside Atlanta are good, hardworking people, and the rest of us here are freeloading, liberal nutcases, is sort of how they've done that dichotomy. It just works for them as sort of their, if I get this word right, shtick. Shtick. I always get that word wrong. That's my favorite word. I like to use it in print, and I don't have to pronounce it. But anyway, that's their thing, and I think it's hard to counter that. And I think, given that you have a compressed period of time, I think it really is. I think, a show of force almost, and that you have to inundate the legislators, as difficult as they are to work with. I still think that in terms of stopping bad legislation in a compressed period of time, you've got to work with them.
Have you factored in the fact that in 2002, we had a lot of Democratic elected officials, and that's when we put in the electronic voting machines, and they installed viruses in there to flip the votes, and those viruses are still in the machines. We might not be as red as we think we are.
I'd like to think that it was voter fraud, but I actually do think we are a fairly conservative state. And the trending was going. This state was trending Republican all along, and there's some debate about the Roy Barnes defeat, whether or not that was really spurred by angry teachers or simply the natural progression of a changing demographic. And what's interesting is
electronic machines.
Well. When I came here from New Jersey, of course, which is a fairly liberal state, and even though I was covering what I would consider a relatively conservative area, when I got here, I realized that Democrats in Georgia were the Republicans in New Jersey. I mean, it's a very different thing here. I mean, many of our Democrats, there are some Democrats that down there too. I mean, so in other words, it's conservative across party lines here. I think that it's, and part of that, one of the things that shocks me about Georgia, and we have about 25% of our population here have bachelor's degrees. But what's interesting is only 9% of the population have graduate degrees or higher. And I think, I don't want to downgrade the state because I like Georgia, I like Atlanta, I live in Decatur, I think it's a great place to live. But, I think that people decry our current education system, but they really should be complaining about the old education system. Because I think that we need to bolster our college graduates, we need to bolster our graduate degree folks as well. We simply need to raise the level here, and I think if you raise the level of education, you will raise the level of discourse and the willingness of people to consider the nuances that you're talking about. The other problem that you all have probably seen is you cannot convince the legislature to think long-term. They don't like that. I've heard a million advocates say, well, it's going to cost us more in the short term, but we're going to save more down here. They don't care about that because, as you point out, they're thinking 2 years from now or next year with their election and what they'll be able to say on those little cards that they send out in the mail, most of which I think people just throw away. I was stunned how much mail I got this past election from local candidates stating all their accomplishments. But, I think that it's going to take time to change the sway of the legislature. And I think that, maybe the policy, we're talking about the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute, maybe building the argument financially might eventually work, but I actually think it's going to take really incredible effort by advocates